The Geekorama podcast is brought to you by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for novels featuring the superpowered heroes we all love. Your hosts are
Trish Heinrich, author of the Vigilante Superhero Universe.
And I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame universe.
Wow, the quarantine energy is strong with us today.
So officially, the crazy has set in. There is no way around it. It is... I'm from Maine. I'm used to being isolated, and even I'm starting to lose my mind.
Yeah, my girls... So Rosalind has hit the point where she's like, you could tell, in her head, she's like, I have no more fucks to give. She's just like, I'm going to annoy the shit out of my sister, and I don't care what happens.
I can't even fathom kids right now, like, especially kids who need structure. Like, there are those kids that just, they'll roll with the punches, but those kids who need structure right now, I feel like they're going to start gnawing on the furniture soon.
So my youngest can flit around like a butterfly, and she's happy. She's like, whatever, la la la. And my oldest, if she's a lot like me, if she doesn't have structure and she doesn't have clearly defined expectations of what's going on, she starts having legit anxiety. And so she and I, as a combination with that right now, it's dicey. It's a little dicey, to say the least.
And then I just have the image of your youngest just literally fluttering around.
She does. She does it for the longest time. She did not walk on her flat feet. She walked on tippy toes for like 2 years. We could not get her to walk on flat feet. She was like, no. And she would have her arms kind of out to her sides. And I'm just like, oh my God. And we had her in dance classes at like 3. So some of that we thought was from that, but then she just kept going for 2 years.
She was born for heels.
She really was. Oh my God, she was.
Okay, so what has been going on with you this week?
Well, besides that, all that craziness, I'm finally feeling better. I still have a little bit of a cough. It's weird. It's like I'll be fine, and then I'll have a coughing fit in the middle of the day, and then I'm fine again. But at least I feel human, and I have energy, and I'm sleeping now, which is wonderful. So I'm getting writing done. I'm getting a lot compared to the 3 weeks prior done. And then this week I'm also going to start outlining book 3, because I'm working on book 2 of Heroes of High Tide right now, which is on pre-order for August, but I'm hoping to move it up to July. And then I'm going to outline book 3, or start to outline book 3 this week. And I'm also proofing the audiobook for Serpent's Return, which is a little slow going. I'm working with a first-time narrator, which is fine. Everybody has to start somewhere, but I'm finding a lot of notes, just little things that I'm like, okay, this needs to be adjusted. And so it's a slow going proofing process, but I'm really hopeful that we're going to have a really good audiobook at the end of it.
So I found audiobooks to be probably the most taxing mentally writing task I've ever done. Reading and listening with intent is not like listening for enjoyment of any kind.
No. And I'm finding myself being hypercritical of my writing. I'm like, oh my God, I did not write this for audio, which I'm doing all my newer books writing for audio. I'm actually doing a full read through out loud of them before they're ever published. I did not do this with this book, and I feel like it's glaringly obvious. So
the thing that I notice the most is in a book that wasn't prepped for audio ahead of time, when multiple sentences in a row start with the same word.
I don't have them starting, but I do have like several paragraphs with the same word repeated like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, how did I miss that? That first book, especially the one that's going into audio, it was edited like 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure how that slipped through.
And some people don't edit for that. So my biggest suggestion if you want to use like Pro Writing Aid, even Grammarly will do it, or AutoCrit, they have a setting that will look for repeated words that are within like a psychological bracket of when it feels that it's repeated.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Well, and I have my new line editor. She looks for that. Like
Oh,
she's
good.
great. So, she is fantastic. I'm so glad that I'm now working with her because she will find repetitive words, she'll find sentences, and she's so brutally honest. Like she literally write, this makes no fucking sense. I'm
I'll
like,
write
oh, good.
something like her hand, and then her lower arm appendage thing. Like I started trying to find interesting words, and sometimes my editor is just like, a hand can just be a hand, right? Even
Yeah.
twice in the same paragraph, just hand.
It's okay. Yeah.
Stomach, torso, midriff, uh, center of gravity. Like I come up with some weird explanations for
Damn.
things.
I gotta try that. That's a good exercise, actually.
It
Well,
it's
is that
horrible.
which it's is that what you've been doing with your time? You're coming up with synonyms?
Pretty much. Um, so uh, I am submitting my superhero romance today. I got your
Woohoo!
notes, and I definitely went through and made my adjustments. And I definitely think that uh, the the climax is now at the climax. Ta-da!
Nice.
Um,
Although that
so
bathroom scene was hot, I was like, whoa. Oh, okay. I like it.
So, yeah, I actually had a long conversation with the editor today about how people put down romance, and I was like, no, 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 no. You've earned my respect, romance writers. Like, it is hard to have a plot around steaminess.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's hard to stay turned on when the world is in jeopardy.
Yes,
Like,
that's
and
exactly
make it
right.
believable. So
Yeah,
they have my respect all over the place. So that's going out. I have started working on a superhero novella that I'm going to give out to my readers for free. That takes place a couple of years before the first series,
nice.
um, and it's just kind of a how did they get to where they are type
Mhm.
story. Um, but it's taking some time because I have to keep reviewing facts and making sure I'm not screwing up timeline. But I'm like 7,000 words into that now, and then um, I am about two-thirds done with my second uh, psychic book, my Eleanor prequel,
Oh,
whatever.
fantastic.
Um, and I'm expecting that at the latest it will be done by midweek next week. And then
Congratulations.
which I told you like 2 weeks ago that I was throwing away the whole manuscript because I hated
Yep.
it. It was horrible. Well, in 2 weeks, I have already surpassed my word count. So
I'm so happy for you, man.
I have written 100,000 words already this year.
That is fantastic. I have to admit I'm a little jealous. That is so good. You have given me like I kind of want to catch up to you. I want to see if I can do it, but I don't know if I can.
My hold on, this is just I need to purely brag
You
because
should brag because you have been a maniac with this, and I love it.
so I have to give a major shout out for this. I'm in a writing group with Mal Cooper and Jill Cooper, and Jill Cooper is psycho. Like, she is a taskmaster. She yells at the bot for not working quick enough.
Damn.
Um,
Now I'm scared.
but because she's such a taskmaster, I have been writing on a good. If I hit my goal, it was 5,000 words a week. This last week, I hit 23,000.
Congratulations.
I
That's
wrote my
stunning,
whole
man.
week in one day this week. So that's my not even close to humble. I am bragging outright.
You should be bragging. That's incredible to increase your word count that much in such a short amount of time. Absolutely, you should be screaming that from the mountaintops.
So
Congrats.
my biggest suggestion to other authors out there: go find people that are like you because they're crazy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So what do we have for some pop culture history?
So actually, when I was doing the research for April, I was like, there's some really interesting kind of fun things that happened in April. So today we're going to just feature the following. In 1902, the first full-time movie theater in the United States opened in Los Angeles, and it was called Electric Theater. And at the time, the only thing that was showing really was they called them Nickelodeons
Yep.
because they cost a nickel. They're all silent. Most of them had an organist that would accompany the features if it was like a feature instead of, like projected on a sheet as opposed to watching in a little device. So this theater, I don't know this for certain, but the implication that in my research was that it was one of those like single screen jobs with some chairs and an organist.
Hmm.
And it didn't do live theater, which was so crazy back then. It only showed Nickelodeons. So,
We actually still have one in Somerville,
oh,
and
fun.
it shows modern stuff, and it's got multiple theaters now, but the original theater is still there, and it's truly what you would think of an old school theater. And you
Yeah.
can even see where there's an area for an organist or a pit crew or whatever.
Gosh, I love that kind of stuff. I just think that that's beautiful history.
Here's the weird thing: in 1902, we didn't have cars.
That is a good point.
So no longer are you just going to the movies to watch a movie. It is an entire event.
It is an event. People used to get dressed up actually to go to the movie theater. Like it was a deal.
And
Um,
now, I show up in my sweatpants.
well, yeah. Back when we can go to the movies again.
Yeah,
Um,
when?
when? Okay, so in April of 1982, NASA announced that the first female astronaut would be Sally K. Ride, and the first black astronaut would be Gion S. Bluford Jr. So, if we really want to think about that, NASA had been sending men into space since the 1960s,
Hmm.
and it took them about 20 years to have a black man and a woman go to space.
And wasn't it only last year that they had the first flight manager? The
It's been in the last decade or maybe decade and a half that we have had a slew of women be the first. So the first all-female crew went up recently. The first female flight director.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And then there was the first black female astronaut was in relative terms very recently. I think it was in the early 2000s. If I'm
Wow.
not maybe late 90s. So yeah. So 1982. First female and first black male. And then last but not least, and this one is the super important one. In,
Damn.
in April of 2000, the Pokemon card game premiered.
So it can't be 2000 though.
It was. That's what my research said. I might maybe their website was wrong, but
And I'm not saying it's off by a lot, but I remember playing Pokemon in high school my senior year
hmm.
with the original starter deck. Like
When was
there's
that?
it would have been 1999.
Huh. Maybe it was more wide distribution, is what they were
And
talking about.
and if I remember, because I didn't actually have any, a couple of my friends bought like a starter pack basically,
Uh-huh.
and we would play with them. Except because you had this starter pack, you only had what was given to you. So if you didn't get a lucky hand, you were just screwed from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Oh, yeah.
There was lots of yelling with my friends. We were geeks way back when.
That's okay. Sorry for the weird sounds. I was adjusting it. My seat likes to squeak. Anyway,
Um,
that's the pop culture history for this week.
so what have you been geeking out about?
Well, so I the new Roswell. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm geeking out about the new Roswell. Season 2 premiered a couple of weeks ago. Now I was a big fan of the original because oh my God, do I love a good teen angst television show. My Buffy limited edition box set should tell you that. Um, so I loved the original for its teen angstiness. And I was really kind of stuck my nose up at when I heard they were remaking it. I was like, ugh, why? Because I didn't realize they weren't going to have them in high school. They were going to have them as adults.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is like 10 years after they graduated.
But it's still teen angst.
It's more new adult angst, and there's
Oh, okay.
the stakes are actually a lot higher. It's a darker television show. I will say it is much darker than the original Roswell. They actually have Hispanic people in this one, which was really not cool in the original. You've got it's Roswell, New Mexico, and literally everybody is white, and they are so white. It's just stunning. But in this one, um, it's not Liz Parker, it's Liz Orteco, and her father owns the Crash Down. The Crash, for those of you, and by for anybody that watched the original, there are some freaking tastic fan service moments in the show that they just kind of drop in front of you and they move on. They don't make a deal out of it. It's just there. And the Crash Down is literally the exact same restaurant they used in the original. It's the same building. It's the same interior setup. Um, Liz's dad is an undocumented immigrant. And right away, the first scene is Liz coming back into town and getting stopped because they're searching for illegal immigrants. And the sheriff of Roswell is a Hispanic woman, which is awesome. Maxwell Evans, who is the angsty, kind of brown-eyed, cute alien. He's a deputy. He works at the sheriff's department.
Hmm.
Liz is a scientist. She works in genetics and researching basically regenerative medicine. And she's come back into town because it's the anniversary of her sister's death. And it's also the 10-year reunion for the high school class.
So are these the same characters?
They are all the same characters, but they're not.
Okay.
Same names. Liz, it was Liz Parker in the original, now it's Liz Orteco. Um, and you still have Michael, you still have Isabel, you still have Maria DeLuca. And what I love about Maria's character is she's of mixed racial heritage. So her mom is black and her father was Hispanic. And she talks about how I didn't fit in anywhere in this town. I didn't fit in with the Hispanic students. I didn't fit in with the black students. I didn't fit in with the white students. Like she's just this kind of huge outsider. She owns a bar. Her mom owned a bar, and Maria is running it because her mom is mentally unstable in the show, which is new. In the original, the mom was not mentally unstable. She was just kind of into woo and meditation and that kind of thing. The military is still involved. Let me see, you got Max, Izzy, and Michael. So Michael is still kind of a delinquent, for lack of a better word, but he's a freaking brilliant delinquent. He got into all these colleges. He's like literally the smartest guy in the room when it comes to science and engineering, but he didn't go to college because of the big mystery that happened with Liz's sister's death. And that is the big, huge mystery of the first season. What really happened to Liz Orteco's sister on the night she died?
Have you ever actually been to Roswell?
I have never been, but I've always wanted to go.
So,
because I'm just a big
funny
dork.
story, I can make a segue with this. The cowboy hat and me visiting Roswell were the same trip.
No!
So, I drove to Texas with my mother to get a cowboy hat. And once we got there, we're in Amarillo, Texas, and we decided, let's keep going. So we just drove through the Midwest and
oh my God.
stumbled. Like when I say driving, like there aren't roads where we went, so we're not entirely sure if we were on people's property or not.
Oh my God.
And all of a sudden we see a sign for Roswell, Mexico, and I was like, well, of course we're going there.
You gotta stop.
The McDonald's has a flying saucer in it.
Now I so want to go because I am such a big nerd. I'm such a big nerd about this stuff.
All their lampposts have the little alien face on them.
Seriously?
Like, they own it. Like I went to the Alien Museum. I
Aw.
went to like all these alien things while I was there. It's so like over the top tourist that it's ridiculous. But
I really want to go.
and while I was there, I couldn't find Mexican food.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
In Roswell, New Mexico, you could really?
Couldn't even find Tex-Mex.
No, that's a crime against humanity. That's what that is.
Yeah.
I will say also one other thing that I really liked, really quick about the reboot is they have LGBTQ representation. It is, I will say, it's one character. Michael is bisexual, and Alex Maines, who was played to perfection by Colin Hanks, whom I've always had a crush on, um, is great. He's a war vet, and he is disabled. He is missing a leg. So he's a disabled war vet, and he and Michael are former lovers. They fell in love in high school. And then he went to the army, and it's this big kind of tragic romance between the two of them and their chemistry. Oh my God. Whew. I'm just like, kiss him. Just do it.
Well then.
Oh my God, it's so good. But like I said, it is darker. In the original, there is some kind of mystery about were there other aliens, and you find out there were, but in this one, they were refugees, and so the idea this is actually quite brilliant. I think they use the aliens as refugees fleeing their planet, and the refugees coming from south of the border in conjunction. They're both being used as not used, but they're both represented. There's a word I'm trying to think of. It's basically allegory. So they're using, we were refugees, we were fleeing for our lives, we were wanting a better life, and we crash landed here. And you find out that Max, Isabel, and Michael are like literally the only three that never got captured. Well, there's one more, but that's part of the mystery. I don't want to spoil it, but the government rounded up all of them, and you end up finding out late in the first season what happened, and it is dark. I'm not gonna lie. I sat there on the couch, tears. I mean, I was almost sobbing because they don't hold back on this show. So I will say that if you're somebody that's really sensitive to torture, be careful watching some of the later episodes of season 1 because it gets a little dicey. But like they do use the aliens as refugees as allegory for like what's happening politically with refugees in our own country, and it was very well done. Anyway, I love it. I'm watching the new season now, and I'm still loving it. I'm still really liking it, so I recommend it. It's the first season's on Netflix, so binge your heart out, everybody.
My geek out. So
Yes, sorry, I waxed.
Oh, that's kind of what the geek out is about.
Yeah, I know.
So I have two. I'm going to give you the one that I was originally going to go with, and we're going to kind of skirt through it because, of course, we're all locked inside and we are binging just about anything at this point. And so I decided I had originally watched the first episode with some friends for Netflix's Lock and Key. It's a show that is based on a graphic novel by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, and like the graphic novel like had all these accolades to it, and so I was like, okay, Netflix has done pretty good with these things, and I'm here to tell you, my first geek out is me bored to tears. I did my laundry. So we always give great geek outs. I'm going to say I had a great geek out fail on this one. Ultimately, what I came up with was the only lock and key I care about is gathering up the kids in this story, putting them in the closet, locking it, and losing the key. It was boring. I'm 4 episodes in right now, and I just kind of don't care.
Not a good sign.
And I'm not saying that it is, if you like slow tension building and mystery without so much explanation, then this is a good show. For me,
It's atmospheric.
Yes, very much so. And the story is not bad. It's just Netflix could have probably summed it up in 4 episodes,
Yeah.
or at least cut out the first four. But my good geek out is, which actually gives us a better segue to the next thing. If you are looking for something to do and you are bored to tears, then the most important thing is you need to watch Sir Patrick Stewart reading Shakespeare. I was telling Trish about this before it started, and one, Patrick Stewart is just the cutest man in the universe. Like,
Agreed.
you you don't ever want to say he's hot, but you want to hug him and never let go. Um,
Absolutely.
and when he's not acting, he's just comical. Um,
He's such a goof. He's a
so
total goof.
I stumbled into this on sonnet number 10, where he promptly told us he would not be reading sonnet number 9 because, quite simply, I just don't like it. And he does it with such like a smirk and sternness all at the same time. Well, you know what? I no longer like sonnet number 9 either.
And you have no idea why, but because he doesn't like it.
and and it's the thing, like, yeah, you could watch it on TV, you could watch it at your computer, but what you need to do is you need to get your laptop, you need to get on your couch, pour yourself some wine, put your laptop in your lap because Sir Patrick Stewart is in your living room with you, and he reads you these sonnets, and he does one, he's just a great reading voice, and he does it with such great inflection. But the thing that makes this so charming is when he stops and speaks to you at the beginning and the end. He doesn't interrupt. He's a pretty good reader. You feel like, oh yeah, there's 17 million other people watching this, but he's speaking to me, damn it. And so I feel like I owe him an email being like, I appreciate you stopping by for tea. So if you want a little bit of culture and you want some Patrick Stewart in your life, he's releasing these on Twitter, on Facebook. Oh my God, they're everywhere. But the last one I saw was 10 yesterday, so 11 will be out at some point today. And you know, I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan to begin with, but he makes me fall in love with that all over again, and he's just
Aww,
adorable.
he is adorable.
So, which that offers the perfect segue.
It really does. Go ahead, introduce the deep dive.
Okay, so I've talked about it for my geek out before, but now Trish finally caught up.
Hmm.
I'm blaming her for this. Well, and the last episode was just last week, so we are going to dive into Star Trek's Picard.
Woohoo!
Um, if you haven't watched it, I will include the code. I'll see if I can find it, but you can watch Picard for free with the CBS app right now.
Hmm.
It's kind of their quarantine goodwill, I guess. Um,
And do
but
it. Just do yourself a favor and do it.
just do it. And there are definitely some haters out there. And I mean,
Oh
not a
yeah.
few haters. Some people loathe this show.
Yeah.
Um, but they're
I
wrong.
actually do. I want to, after we've talked about really what we like about it, I do want to address some of that because I was in watching it. I was like, they got mad about that? Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, that's not even that's nothing.
Um, and and ultimately they wanted like the good old fashioned Star Trek Next Generation where there's a dilemma, there's a problem, there's a failed solution, a solution, and then now we're wiser as a species because of it.
Yeah.
Um, I got multiple years of that in Next Generation. I'm kind of bored with episodal.
Yeah. Well, and also I think even drilling down even further, they wanted pre-Borg when Gene Roddenberry was in charge of Next Gen Star Trek. I think that's what a lot of them wanted. And spoiler alert, folks, Star Trek was almost canceled when Gene Roddenberry was running it. The Borg literally saved that show. And they only were able to do that after Gene Roddenberry wasn't running the thing anymore.
Um, so Do you want to do? Uh,
Let's do what we loved.
okay, let's do what we love first.
Okay. So you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Okay, so I'm gonna go first because
You go first.
I have such a pinpointed thing I love.
Okay, do
In
it.
all of Next Generation, in all of the movies, my complete and utter favorite villain is the Borg.
Yes.
The Borg plays a huge role in this season,
Hmm.
but they are not the enemy. And I'm not going to go into all the spoiler about that, but we get to understand the Borg on a level and in a manner that has never been explored before. We got a little bit in First Contact, but they took it to an extreme in this one.
Yeah.
And so, because we have the Borg, the only other thing that could possibly matter is Seven of Nine.
Woohoo!
And we get Seven of Nine,
I will.
and we get Jerry Ryan being the best Jerry Ryan can
Oh
be.
God.
Um, I like her so much better now that she's literally and metaphorically let her hair down.
Yes.
Um, and then what I really did love, the episode. So there's a lot of fan service in this,
Hmm.
and I didn't catch all of it. Like I had to actually go back and look. I like Star Trek a lot, but I won't say I can tell you every episode. Um, when there was fan service, it moved the plot along enough that it felt meaningful and it wasn't
Hmm.
just a wasted cameo.
Exactly.
There isn't a uh, there isn't a cameo of every person in it.
Mm.
I was a little bit uh, sad that Mc, McFadden,
Gates McFadden. Yeah.
Gates McFadden, wasn't in it. Um, but everyone that was there, we get to see a little bit of how their story progressed, how their
Hmm.
story with Picard progressed, how their story, like, it's a lot of information, and then it just poof, it just
Yeah.
happened. Um, the episode with number one is
Oh,
was just,
I
I
love it's
thought
one of my favorites.
it was so pivotal to the overall plot, and you didn't
Hmm.
understand why you were too busy geeking out over fan service.
Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, you realized, oh, every bit of that was actually served a purpose and a very important
Hmm.
purpose. So those
Yeah.
are my three major loves.
Some of our I they those are all part of my loves too, honestly. But I'm going to talk about um I loved Space Vegas. The planet, I call it Space Vegas. I know it has a different name, but it was the only thing I could think of. I was like, "Oh my God, it's like Space Vegas." Um and one of the reasons I loved it was Patrick Stewart with an eye patch and a really bad French accent. He, I have never seen him chew the scenery before, and it was delightful. Oh my God, it was so delightful.
The He across the board was just so good,
He was
even
so
when
good.
he was bad. Like,
Yeah.
you walk away. I had to go watch a couple old episodes of Next Generation just to connect some dots. And seeing him then and now, one, man, I whatever his skincare regimen is, we should all be doing it.
Seriously.
And then on top of that, he is so good with like these weird subtle nuances.
Yes. He's great with the subtext, honestly.
Yes.
I loved it.
And
Go ahead.
and I was going to say, I think this there was the Starfleet plot, like the sci-fi plot that happened,
Hmm.
but the more impressive plot was the plot of A Man Past His Prime.
Yes, I thought, yeah, and that was one of the things I actually did love about it was you have a guy that nobody is taking seriously anymore, who's very used to being taken seriously. And I think you brought this up in your geek out about a month ago. And it continues throughout pretty much the whole show. And what I found really funny was he would pull the Picard, this rousing speech, and I'm this, and I'm gonna do this, and people were like, "No, you're not." Like, it
Yeah,
didn't work.
they
It conti
shrugged.
yeah, up to the even the last episode, it didn't work.
And it was
Nobody was persuaded by the Picard speech.
and when 7 of 9 shows up, she kind of gives him the "your past your prime" speech,
Yeah,
and then you see him with Deanna Troy and uh,
Riker,
Riker. I'm just gonna always call him number
number
one.
one. That's okay.
Um,
I thought you were
with
talking
the
about the dog for a second, and I was like, oh yeah, no.
that was kind of funny.
I loved it.
The They treat him like the captain he was,
Yeah.
and so you can see where he kind of has this dual personality of
Hmm.
this legendary Starfleet captain and a washed up has been.
Yeah.
Um, and he left Starfleet on really bad terms, and
Really
yet
bad. We find out about that, and it is one of the, that's another thing that I loved actually was showing us the imperfection of Starfleet because I have never been a huge fan of, I mean, I know it's been part of Star Trek, but it's never been one of the Starfleet's perfection and it's all good and it's so helpful and wonderful. That has never appealed to me. And they started to chip away at that, I felt like with Deep Space Nine. And then really started to chip away with it with Star Trek Discovery, which I admit I haven't seen a lot of that one because it is on the CBS Access app and I don't have it. But I know that this in particular was a point that a lot of people hated.
yeah,
When they talk about why they hated the show, showing a rottenness to Starfleet was one of the reasons that things that they hated, but I actually really liked it because I have an acute suspicion of any group or government that is held up as perfect.
well, and
And I
they go through
actually,
in like First Contact, they show what a post-war society looked like,
yeah,
and we were just starting to come back together as a species. And so as a species, we're good. We've eliminated money, we've eliminated hunger, we've done a
mhm.
lot of stuff. But
As a
I'm sorry,
government,
but we screw up quite a bit. Like to think
yeah,
that we take that perfection intergalactic, like I think that's asking a bit much. That is where I can't suspend disbelief.
yeah, exactly. And that's where I've been too. And so it being able to look at Starfleet and say, no, they're flaws. It's not. And I did like the moment. It's in the first episode where Picard is asked, why did you leave Starfleet? And he says, because it wasn't Starfleet anymore. And what I find interesting is Picard's disillusionment with Starfleet mirrors a lot of our disillusionment, I feel like, with our own government. Not trying to get political here on the podcast, but I see a lot of direct correlations in what they were doing with Starfleet and America post 9/11. I just really do. And in a broader context, Star Trek has always been political. It's always been about socio-political movements, racism, indigenous oppression. I mean, it's been about a lot of different things. And I thought they handled it really well. I was actually very impressed with it.
And I find it
Um,
funny that the things that, and I'm going to call them out, fanboys. The thing that the fanboys hate is the disillusionment that Picard still had in the first episode.
yeah,
And they and Picard were the same person in that first episode.
exactly.
And you know what? You want that? Go watch Next Generation. You got it already.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's just reboot Next Generation instead of moving on. If that's really what you're after, I'm after something that has progressed and has evolved,
Mhm. Yes. And
good
this
and
did.
bad.
Yeah. I did love 7 of 9. I totally agree with you. I will say if I don't get Star Trek Space Rangers, I really will legitimately lose my effing mind because she wasn't in it a ton, but when she was on screen, it was electric. It
So,
and I don't know what the difference is. I never really liked her on Voyager. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I saw her as a sex object, pure and simple. And unfortunately, that's exactly the way they wrote her. But in this, she was an actual flesh and blood character, and I adored her.
she was Deanna Troy of Voyager.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, right down to the outfit.
Yeah.
She was a pair of breasts with some implants. She was literally fanboy wet dream.
Yeah.
Um, and because in that show, half of her like story arc and the constant re-bringing up, I love Voyager, but I'll be the first one to say its problems are aplenty.
Oh yeah.
Um, the only thing I liked about it later on was 7 of 9, and that's really not saying a whole lot. So, um, but we got the two things that I thought was missing. One, she has a purpose.
Yes.
She never had a purpose in Voyager. Like, she was lost
No.
most of the time, and that was her ongoing plot.
Yeah.
Um, and we finally get her to reconnect with the Borg,
Hmm.
not as a uh, as an extension of the Borg, but as a human.
Yes. As a
And so
leader, as an independently minded leader, not as part of the collective.
when she took on the role of the Queen,
Oh,
drop mic, I got everything I wanted in the show. It could end right
I
there. I'm done.
mean, yeah. Well, okay. So, but wait, can we talk about Elnor real quick, though? Can we talk about cute little samurai Romulan?
So my if you deleted him out of the show, what would have changed?
Not a lot, but I have to say, okay, so this is where my little maternal heart is like, oh, puppy. Like, he was the puppy of the show. He really was. And I freaking adored him. He served no purpose, but oh my God, I adored him.
His only purpose was to show that Jean-Luc Picard was a horrible person.
Yeah, that John actually they did that really well in the show. That's the other thing they did really well. They made Picard flawed as hell.
Yep.
And also did not paper over those flaws. He didn't really get a get out of jail free card for those.
No.
Rafi, who I love, she's probably my favorite member of his crew. I loved Rafi. She takes him to task. She's like, "You're an asshole. You did this to me. You did that to me. No, I don't trust you."
And
Like,
even at the end of the series, people aren't 100% with him. I mean, they're
no.
willing. He's a good leader. They'll admit that piece, but he's sometimes a bad man.
Yeah. And I liked that. Give me a flawed hero. I don't want a perfect hero. Give me
Um,
flaws.
the thing with Elnor, the when he first comes on, he is a he's Romulan,
Yeah.
except this sect of Romulans are taught to express emotion without reservation.
Mhm. Honesty above everything else.
Yep. And so, one, it was very good to see Jean Luc Picard have emotion because a lot of the times he's a stern faced leader who eats his
Hmm.
emotions. And in this, he didn't. He emoted quite a bit. But I really think the only reason this dude was in the show was so we could watch him cry at the end.
Possibly.
When he starts bawling like a
Oh my
child,
God. Oh
yeah,
my
that
God.
hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it also was great to give Rafi, who's estranged from her son, and that scene broke my heart. The scene with Rafi trying to reconnect with her son and her son basically just telling her to fuck off. Like, oh my God, that hurt.
I kind
But
of had a
then,
problem with that. That
really?
for me, that almost felt like she already had a long list of flaws walking into it. That was almost saying we're gonna kick her while she's down, just to give
Oh,
her more angst to her character. I thought she had perfect angst at this point.
oh, she did. Well, and real quick, we'll talk about Elnor in a second, but Rafi, I will say, one of the things people had beef about was the vaping. She did it like 4 times, people. She did it 4 freaking times, and it was actually an important part of her character. She's a recovering drug addict.
And
She was,
she's getting high as a kite.
yeah, that's her. She's on drugs. Like, that's the
Yeah.
drug she's addicted to. So when she does it, we are seeing her fall off of the wagon and then have to crawl back out again. I thought it was powerful to have a recovering drug addict as a main character in this show.
And can we just comment that Ferengis have hookers? So really,
Okay, Orion Slave Girls.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I have a list. Hold on, this is very interesting. There's an episode in the Next Gen. Patrick Picard goes to a pleasure planet or a vacation
yes.
planet. Riker gives him a code word that basically means "have sex with me." We have the planet where Wesley's almost killed before crushing flowers. And does anybody remember how little those people wore? It was freaking scandalous. So don't even complain to me about all the sex in Picard. No, people, no.
There you see a butt like lump once.
Once,
Once.
once.
And it's not.
I thought there'd be boobs. Like people were so off the cuff, like enraged. I thought, oh, there's gonna be boobs. There's no boobs.
And it's they weren't even having sex. They were having pillow talk post sex.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that Jonathan Frakes wasn't tapping Deanna Troy every time she walked to his room, put the hand up, and just
I
waited
mean,
there?
you
Like,
know, let's talk about Kirk. Let's talk about the
uh,
fact that McCoy was probably giving him weekly injections to combat some kind of new STD he picked up somewhere. Come on, let's be serious, people. Kirk was a man whore.
yeah, so, and it wasn't even Picard's character, so it's not like it violated his character. It's a brand new character doing this. And it plays so heavily into the plot
Yeah, it's important actually to the plot.
that the sex had little to do with anything. It was about a relationship and some deceit and some trust building. Like, it served so much prudeness.
And yeah,
Pillow talk.
it's ridiculous. Get over yourselves, people. Anyway, okay.
Prudes.
Prudes, totally prudes. Um, wow, that was a tangent. I don't know what we were talking about before then.
Everybody
Uh,
else on the show, I will also say, wears clothes that does not accentuate perfect breasts.
yeah,
They are all wearing reasonable gear out and doing whatever it is they're doing.
I
So,
greatly appreciated that. I greatly appreciated that.
so if we're gonna talk about scandal, like literally, Deanna Troy wore a cat suit, a velour cat suit,
So did Seven of Nine.
and Seven of Nine, like Jerry Ryan is quite well endowed. Like
Hmm.
it's hard to see her face.
I think, if I remember correctly, that suit was padded.
Oh, so that was the other thing is I may have Googled Jerry Ryan breast size because I was curious if she had had surgery.
Well,
The gay
she looks
man
like I'm.
is
It's
doing
fine. Yeah.
research on Jerry Ryan's breasts.
Well, yeah, it's okay. It's all right. She looked.
And she
Yeah.
did not have a reduction, mind you. I did find out.
Okay. But I mean, she's dressed like a space ranger.
Yeah.
She's dressed like, hey, I'm here to kick some ass, and I don't really care what I look like. I mean, it's actually it was so refreshing. I mean, yeah, and I liked the idea of because Data is one of my all-time favorite science fiction characters ever, and I love the idea that spoiler everybody, um, that these girls are his daughter.
Yeah.
Like that immediately endeared me to wanting those characters protected.
Well,
Um,
and we've seen
great
his
writing.
we've seen a child of his before that did not end well. So this
Yeah,
picks up on a thread that didn't get fulfilled in Next Generation. So
yeah.
it felt like we had connections to Next Generation in multiple places.
All over the place. Hugh, which I vaguely remembered. My Dan had to remind me about Hugh because I did not remember that. But Hugh was a Borg that they separated from the collective and helped get his individuality back. And then he went back to the collective to try to free other Borg. And he's in this.
And his role was amazing as far
It
as I'm
was
concerned.
amazing. It was totally amazing.
He might be
Um,
the only red shirt to ever unred themselves.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, I the Borg have always been like my favorite villain as well, and freaking terrifying. The Borg are terrifying, but in this, they somehow did some like writing voodoo and they made them completely sympathetic. The ones that were left over in this like decommissioned cube. You feel
So
so sorry for these people.
essentially what happens is one of the Borg cubes has been disconnected from the network. So when they get so badly damaged to preserve themselves, they disconnect and they become a local hive mind and they detach from the bigger collective.
Hmm.
And so what we see is Romulans they've lost their homeworld, which this did cause a little bit of confusion because um, it took me a while to figure out that they're Romulans. Vulcans also lose their homeworld in the J.J. Abrams adaptation.
Yes.
And I was like, how many people's planets are going to blow up as we keep moving forward?
But they're different timelines, so
Yeah.
I don't think they intersect. Yeah.
And so the Romulans have essentially turned this Borg vessel into a camp, a home. And it plays really well into the overall plot line of why.
And it's a weird kind of it's kind of a neutral zone if you think
Yeah.
because the Borg and the Federation also have jurisdiction there. So
You know
it's
what
like
it kind
this
of reminded me
shared
of?
jurisdiction.
Um, the the giant floating head in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just where everyone goes. You're just gonna go
Yeah.
there, do
You're gonna go
bad
there, you're gonna
stuff.
hang out. Yeah.
Um, but the only thing, this is gonna be my number one dislike. Well, okay, my number two. You know what my number one is.
Yeah, we
My
share the same number one.
So my number two dislike is we finally get Seven of Nine. She's jacked into the Borg. She's rebooting it. We're seeing what the actual reconstruction of the Borg is looking like. Like she's getting ready to open up a can of
Throw
whoop
down.
ass, and then they all die.
Oh my God, that really pissed me off. I will admit, I was ready for some Romulans to get some freaking payback.
All I
Like,
wanted was like a little scuffle, just a little something,
something.
and they literally kill 99% of them
Yeah,
like
they
that.
flush them out into space. And I was like, seriously?
And on top of that, does space really matter to them?
I think they do still breathe.
I don't,
Well, do they?
I don't
Actually,
know.
no. Actually, they don't. Because do you remember First Contact? They're outside the ship without suits attacking the guys
Oh
in the
yeah.
suits.
So
So it doesn't really even matter.
I have a
Ah,
sneaking suspicion because they do show back up a little bit later, and there's only a small handful of them. I just
yeah.
have this image of the Borg just kind of going around going, "Pick you up, pick you up."
If they get, well, they didn't show the cube because so the cube actually crashes on the home world of all of these synthetics that are basically Data's kids. Data has like a shit ton of kids now. Um, and the cube crashed and there it's never shown getting off that planet. Which to me is a question that they never answered in the last episode. What happens to all the former Borg and a few legit still Borg in that cube? Because Seven of Nine leaves.
Well, and so I have like I'm curious to see if there's going to be the fact that this species that's considered perfection has now crash landed on a planet with the first synthetics that are
Yeah,
truly human.
yeah. What is that going to be like? Like, I want to see what happens there.
So I kind of almost feel that Data's kids and the Borg are the same endpoint, but different paths to get there. So I thought that there was some like
Oh,
beautiful,
interesting.
uh, you know, I hope they come back as Data Children Borg in the next season.
I hope something happens. I hope because they make a really it's just such a sad point. Hugh is talking to Picard about how they don't belong anywhere. They're all the former Borg. They are genuinely trying to rehabilitate these people that are able to be deborged, for lack of a better way of saying it. But they all have scars, and some of them have facial implants that they can't get out. And he tells them, he says, "We're not welcome anywhere. We are feared everywhere. We don't have a home. We have no rights." Um, it's just devastatingly sad. And so I hope that they actually find some belonging on that planet. That would be
Well,
really
and
nice.
that's kind of why I hope Seven of Nine story continues because she had a massive personal growth moment becoming the
Hmm.
queen
Yeah, she
because
did.
her statement was, as a Borg, she could have any moment have become the queen, activated them all, and basically controlled them.
Mm-hmm.
And her statement was, "You want me to rob them of their humanity," which was the statement that you wanted her to always say in Voyager, and she never
Yeah.
got there.
Yeah. She did not, they did not have good writing for her in Voyager. I honestly, I feel like it's two different characters. The Seven of Nine we got in Picard, I feel like is a Seven of Nine we always should have had and never got.
I think she had moments like when she rehabilitated the three Borg children. Um,
Oh, I don't remember that. I'll have to look that one up.
she does have a handful of moments. Granted, the first season of Voyager is pretty much trash. The last season of Voyager is kind of trash. I liked everything in the middle.
Everything in the middle was pretty good.
Um, just they they turned the Borg into a ridiculous circus by the end.
Oh,
They were
I
like, "Oh,
don't
we don't know
remember
what to do
that.
this season. Let's have a new Borg queen who's not part of the hive, who is individual and like
Yeah.
you
No,
unscarried the Borg."
they did some weird, I would agree with that. They did some really bizarre things within the canon. I think some of it's been retconned. Speaking of retcon, do you want to talk about our
Yeah.
mutual number one thing that both of us hated?
So the only comment I had seen leading up to the last episode, because I watch everything a day late just because someone was like, that last episode of Picard, can't believe I was crying. Then I saw someone say, "Oh, Picard, you're crying, I'm not crying," and I'm like, "Oh God, what's gonna happen?" And mind you, the episode before, it's a two-parter season finale. I already knew what was gonna happen.
Everybody
Like,
knew what was going to
no
happen.
shit.
Yeah.
Like,
So let's give some context here. Picard, if anybody remembers one of the last episode of Next Gen, he is shown his future and he has a degenerative brain condition in that episode. And in the Picard series, they do go ahead and give him that degenerative brain condition. He is dying. Um, so we start off the Picard this series knowing he is dying. That's
and
the
they don't
context.
sugarcoat it. It's just a
Nope.
fact. They don't know when, but he's got health concerns. Is basically what they
Yeah.
say. Um, and then it's not until the second to last or third to last episode where they're like, all his crew finds out how bad it is, and he's like, "Yo, peace out. Don't want to talk about it. We'll get to it
Yeah.
later. Just
I
we good."
genuinely did. I did love that moment. He's like, if any of you treat me like a dying man, you will piss me off. And I was like, aw, I love that.
Um, but so we're on the home world of all of Data's children, and there's just a bunch of different synthetics that all relatively look similar. And we meet Soon, who is Soon's kid. So
Yeah.
we're down a generation. And it all makes perfect sense. Again, it's just Brent Spiner wants to play another character because he's played like 40 now. Um, and Soon goes into this massive conversation about trying to create a body and move his consciousness into a body. Like, it's such a plot point that is so obvious, they may have just paused it, pointed, and say, "Remember this for later."
Yeah. And
Um,
can I just say, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I will sometimes even stop reading a book where it is obvious that the Deus Ex Machina is introduced for the very first time in the last quarter of the story. I hate it. To me, it is the height of lazy writing, and they did it, and it pissed me off.
and so, what was the scientist's name?
Agnes.
Agnes. At any given moment, her lover and boss, because of course, went to this planet. He discovered it, and he was helping them do, sciencey stuff. At any moment since she was introduced in the first episode, she could have mentioned consciousness
Yes.
transversion or transcendence or whatever.
Because she knew exactly that, and then you hit exactly on what I was thinking. Because she knew Bruce Maddox was the guy's name, and she knew his work inside and out. And when Soong mentioned it, like revealed the golem, she knew it, which is basically like it's a synthetic body that you're going to transfer a consciousness into.
And you can
She
kind
knew
of mold it to
exactly.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, you want it, whatever you want it to look like. So they call it the golem. She knew exactly what it was before Sung even told her. And so I'm sitting here thinking you could have had her mention when all the conversations she had with Picard about Maddox's work, you could have had her at least mention that he was working on that before he left Earth.
And through a plot situation, she kills Maddox. And while she's killing him, she could have just said, I could have saved him, or I should have downloaded him, or, you know,
Yeah,
like, let me put you
something.
on Google Drive. I have no idea. But she had multiple easy one line opportunities.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they waited until the second to last episode. And again, she paused and stared at it for so long
I know.
that I
It
went
was
to the bathroom.
ridiculous. I knew it right then and there, and I told Dan between shows when we were getting drinks, I said that's how they're going to save him. He just looked at me. He's like, I'm kind of embarrassed. I didn't even think about that because we're both sitting here like, first of all, they telegraph that he's going to die every episode.
Yeah.
Every episode, there's some kind of something about his death, and fine, you want to have that, that's great, but everybody knows he's not technically going to die because they greenlit season 2 in the middle of season 1.
Yeah.
For That's so stupid.
I just,
So
surprise, the only person not in Picard season 2 is
is
Picard.
Picard. Like,
Picardless is what they'll call it. And here's the thing, like, okay, fine. You could have at least honored us with saying that this was the situation that was going to happen. We all knew, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. I just kind of have no faith in you as a human being. Like,
yeah, were you
you
not
should read my
watching?
books. You won't notice any of those plot holes.
That
Um,
was an
I'm
epic
sitting here
book.
being an expert. Like,
That's an
really, read my
epic book.
books and you'll understand. So, and then we have this beautiful emotional scene where
Oh
Seven
my
of
God.
Nine in the pilot, whose name I don't remember anyone's name ever. Seven of Nine, that's all I care about. Um, is having this beautiful exchange about, you know, being rogues out in space. And then Eleanor and Raffi have this tender son mom moment. Like, there's so many, like, beautiful little moments that are
Oh
happening.
God,
And you're
it's
like,
gorgeous.
you're just doing this to make people cry. Don't worry, he'll be back for dinner.
Okay, but it pissed me off as a
Yeah,
fan. It really, so here's the thing I wanted. You want to have him have this brain condition, absolutely. Have it last 3 or 4 seasons. Have it actually be the thing that does kill him. Have that increasing tension of, because part of the condition is that he'll black out or he will have these moments of like irrational anger. Have those like start to be ramped up, and in key moments he blacks out or he reacts irrationally and screws something up. That is great tension, and also it's great conflict for this character that, like we said, is so used to being the most capable person in the room, and as you see him degenerate over seasons into not being the most capable person in the room, I'm okay with Picard dying of this condition on a mission. Like,
yeah.
have that be the end. To me, as somebody who has loved this character for decades, I would feel, yeah, that's a good ending. But
Like,
what I got
this
is,
was a cop out sci-fi
it
ending.
was such a cop out. And honestly, I felt like it was a backhanded smack as a fan. I was like,
I would have
thanks.
preferred he just black out and they're like, "Oh, you were so close, but we brought you back. Oh, by the
Exactly.
way, you're cured." I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But
But
you
this whole,
built a subplot to solve a problem that wasn't a problem.
exactly, exactly. And this whole tendency in stories in general to retcon death, it's no longer meaningful. As a reader or as a viewer, it's like, oh, well, they're going to bring him back.
By the way, also don't read my online serial. No one comes back from the death. I promise.
I feel like it was so unnecessary. It was so, and now I feel like there's no threat to him.
So, just one random emotional moment that I absolutely loved that hit everything on the head was when Soji was talking to Deanna Troy in the garden.
Oh,
So
that was perfect.
Deanna Troy lost a child because they outlawed synthetics, and synthetics have a neural net, and the neural net science fiction-y stuff could have saved her son, but because they're banned, they said no, son dies. So here, sitting in front of her, is a synthetic with a neural net that could have saved her kid,
Hmm.
and she grows so unsettlingly angry, and we've never seen Deanna Troy angry. Like, we've seen her
Yeah,
stern, we've seen her miffed, but like this deep rooted anger. And
yeah,
at first I was like, why the hell is she so mad at Soji, like this poor synthetic girl? And someone afterwards goes, she's staring at the cure for her son's death.
yeah.
And I was like, oh. I had to go back and rewatch it. It was unsettling.
It, I honestly, I loved what they did with Riker and Deanna.
Mm-hmm.
It was so simple. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't overplayed. It was simple. But the grief with them, and then they have this awesome girl, this daughter his character I just adored, and their life and their family. But there's this core of tragedy that they are continuously living through bravely and beautifully. And I turned to Dan and I said, "My God, this is like perfect.
That
This is so beautiful."
if the show had ended at the end of that episode, I would have said that was emotional perfection at that point.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and so then when you fast forward to uh, this crying montage of people mourning his death, you felt, guys, did you not watch your own show? Like, you had a perfect situation,
Yeah.
and now you were taking such a cheap shot. Yeah, so I will say all
It,
things perfect except for that.
yeah, it was so this is the last thing I'll say about it, honestly, but it was shockingly compared to the rest of the season. The last two episodes were so bad.
Anticlimactic.
Yes, bad. I'm just gonna say it. They were bad enough. Not terrible, not like, oh my God, it ruined everything, but they were bad enough compared to the rest that I was like, who wrote this? Did the
It
same people write this that wrote the rest of it?
it did give a good context for Starfleet, the Romulans, the synthetics. Like, it positioned things really well.
It did do that. Yes,
But
absolutely.
the actual episode journey was poorly done.
It was very poorly done, especially compared to the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
So
But if
basically,
you
if you are writing a book, start your book bad and end good. Just
if you
saying.
can possibly help it. And I will say that my two favorite episodes were Space Vegas and um, Riker and Troy.
Yeah.
Those were my absolutely, I will rewatch the shit out of those two episodes. Those were just perfection, in my opinion.
So I think for question of the week, we just stick with some good old fashioned Star Trek geekness.
Yes. Do you have an idea?
Oh yeah, because
Okay.
everyone has an opinion on this one.
Okay.
Who's the best captain in Star Trek?
Oh, you did not just throw that down. Oh my God. It's
And
going to get
we'll
messy.
reveal next week who our favorite captain is. Not who you think for mine.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Let's this is going to get interesting.
This
We went
we may actually end the podcast next week because we're not going to be friends anymore.
No, I'm not one of those fans. You could like who you like as long as like, it's not bad. I'm just kidding. We did go a little long, everybody, but I think
Enjoy
that
the quarantine madness.
yeah, it's like a super overstuffed episode for your listening pleasure.
It's Star
Everybody,
Trek.
please.
It's like
It's
40, 50, 60 years.
1967.
Yeah.
Oh, and I will leave a link in the show notes to a fantastic, this is the last thing, movies, Film Joy. If you're not watching Film Joy on YouTube, you are missing out. And it's called Movies with Mikey.
Oh,
And
oh God, yes.
he did a two-part Star Trek episode for Film Joy, and it is a delight. So I will leave that link in the show notes because you have to watch it. It's so good.
You gotta say, every time the theme song for Movies with Mikey comes on, you wish you were in a leisure suit and you're just kind of doing a little dance
Oh
around.
my God, yes. I
Or
love it.
what's the saying that he always does over and over again?
But did you
But
know?
did you know? Yeah, it.
Watch Movies with Mikey.
We will. We'll make sure that that's definitely in the links. I'm gonna actually
Okay.
email him. I'm gonna say like, you
Yes,
earned an honorary spot.
he did. Yes. Okay. Everybody, please stay safe. Take
Take
care of
care of
yourself.
yourselves.
Yes. And we will be back next week.
Next.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.